Welcome to the deep dive. You sent us your learning materials today. It's a really neat beginner's tutorial video.
Yeah, from the sound test room on YouTube. Looks good.
And our job, as always, is to kind of pull out the key stuff, the essentials, so you can get the main ideas without getting bogged down. We do the digging for you.
Exactly. We filter it, find the core concepts, and hopefully spark a few of those aha moments.
And today, the material you shared is, well, it's a perfect starting point for anyone curious about music production, specifically with the Maschine mk3 from Native Instruments.
Right. We're diving into how groups, scenes, and patterns all fit together.
Which is, I mean, it's pretty fundamental stuff if you want to actually make something with Maschine, isn't it?
Absolutely essential. Doesn't matter if you're brand new or just need to solidify how the workflow works. Getting these building blocks down is key.
For sure. And honestly, even if you're not planning to become a producer, just understanding how electronic music is put together, this layered approach, it's kind of fascinating.
It really is.
So our mission for this deep dive, demystify these core bits. We'll follow the tutorial, basically going from zero, a blank project, to seeing how a simple song structure emerges.
And the source is great for this because, being for beginners, it breaks every step down really clearly, very accessible.
Okay, let's jump in. The tutorial kicks off with a totally fresh, empty Maschine project. Like completely blank slate. What's the absolute first thing you see?
Right. So you open it up, new project, and boom, scene one is just there automatically.
Right. Scene one, but it's empty at this point.
Totally empty. No patterns assigned, nothing playing. But it's created for you, like your first container. The tutorial makes a point of that this is your starting block.
Got it. Your initial workspace. So how do you start putting sounds into that workspace? That's where groups come in, I guess.
Precisely. The tutorial introduces groups, shows group A, B, and C as examples. Think of them like separate tracks or channels for different instruments or sounds.
Okay, containers for sounds.
Yeah. And then it walks through loading sounds into these groups. Importantly, it uses sounds from the built-in Maschine library.
Which means anyone with Maschine has access to them, right?
Exactly. No need for extra purchases for this part. The tutorial shows loading a drum kit Dracula Eastwood, kind of a cool name, into group A.
Okay, drums in A.
Then an analog bass sound, just a standard Maschine synth sound, into group B.
Bass and B.
And finally, something a bit different, an acoustic plucked sitar sound into group C.
Sitar and C. So drums, bass, melody element covers the basics.
Yeah, it shows the variety you get right out of the box, uses the library effectively.
All right, so we have our sounds loaded into their respective groups, A, B, C. How do we make them actually play something? The rhythms, the melodies, That's patterns, right? Let's stick with the drums in group A first.
Exactly. Patterns are like the musical phrases, the little loops that belong to a specific group. The tutorial shows a really clear method. First, you hit the pattern button on the hardware, and you hit create. And that makes pattern 1 inside group A. Simple as that.
It's not just random jamming, though, is it? They seem structured.
Very structured. Next step shown is setting the pattern length. In this case, they make it 4 bars long. Gives you a defined loop size.
4 bars, standard length.
Then, for recording the actual beat, they use shift plus record. And importantly, they stress using the metronome. Keep it in time.
Always a metronome. And what if your timing isn't perfect?
Yeah, that's where shift plus quantize comes in. Your best friend sometimes. It snaps your recorded notes to the grid, cleans up the timing, makes it groove properly.
Essential.
The tutorial also quickly shows adjusting volume levels using the mixer, both for the whole drum kit in Group A and for individual sounds within it, like tweaking the snare volume.
Right, balancing the kit. Okay, so that's pattern 1 for the drums. But music needs variation usually.
Right.
How do you build on that first idea?
Good question. The tutorial shows a really smart workflow trick here, creating pattern 2 for the drums by just duplicating pattern 1.
Copy paste, basically.
Yeah. Pretty much. Then you can go into pattern 2 and change things, add a cymbal, take out a kick, tweak the hi-hats. It's way faster than starting from scratch every time and keeps things related. Builds variation efficiently.
That makes a lot of sense, like iterating on an idea. Okay, moving on. Group B, the bass, is creating patterns for a melodic thing like bass different.
The core idea is the same patterns hold the musical idea for that group. But yeah, when you switch to group B, the tutorial points out, hey, there are no patterns here yet. Each group starts fresh.
Right. So you have to create pattern 1 for the bass separately.
Exactly. Create pattern 1. And again, they set the length to 4 bars, just like the drums. Consistency.
But how do you input notes? Like a bass line. You don't just hit pads like drums, do you?
Correct. This is where keyboard mode is key. You press that button on the machine, and suddenly the 16 pads turn into a sort of chromatic keyboard layout.
So you can play melodies or bass lines on the pads.
Yep, you can play notes. The tutorial also shows selecting a musical scale. They pick harmonic minor, which helps make things sound musical by limiting the available notes. Makes it easier if you're not a keyboard whiz.
Handy.
And they drop the octave down to get it into that low bass range. Then, just like the drums, shift plus record to capture the performance.
Okay, record the bass line. And they make a second bass pattern too. How do they do that one? Same duplication method.
Actually, no, and this is a good illustration. For bass pattern 2, they don't duplicate. They create a new blank 4-bar pattern and record a completely different bass line from scratch.
Interesting. So you have a choice. Duplicate and tweak, or start fresh for more contrast.
Exactly. It shows both approaches are valid depending on what you need musically. Adds more distinct variation to the bass part this time.
Got it. So drums and bass now have 2 patterns each in their groups. What about the sitar in group C? Similar process again.
Very similar workflow. Switch to group C, create pattern 1, set it to 4 bars.
Use keyboard mode again.
Yep, use keyboard mode to play the sitar melody. And what's neat is the tutorial points out the machine often remembers the scale and key you set previously, in this case, the harmonic minor from the bass.
Oh, that saves a step.
Yeah.
Keeps you in the flow.
Definitely. So they record a sitar melody for pattern 1, and then following the pattern, they create pattern 2 for the sitar.
Also 4 bars.
Also 4 bars, and again, a different musical idea than pattern 1, just provides another melodic option for that instrument.
Okay, so let's recap where we are. Group A, drums, has pattern 1 and 2. Group B, bass, has pattern 1 and 2. Group C, sitar, has pattern 1 and 2. We've got all these little musical building blocks.
Precisely. Lots of little 4-bar ideas ready to go.
Now, the big question. How do we arrange these blocks? How do we make it feel like a song structure? This is where scenes come back in, isn't it?
You nailed it. Scenes are the arranger. They decide which pattern from which group plays together at any specific time. Remember scene 1 from the very beginning?
Yeah, the one that was automatically created.
Well, now that we have patterns, scene 1 automatically gets assigned pattern 1 from group A, pattern 1 from group B, and pattern 1 from group C. That's its default state once patterns exist.
Okay, so scene 1 plays all the first ideas together, but a song needs changes, sections.
Exactly. So the tutorial shows creating more scenes. Scene 2, scene 3, scene 4, and scene 5.
And the key thing is you can choose different pattern combinations for each scene.
That's the core concept. For every scene, you can look at each group, A, B, C, and select which pattern you want playing. Or you can choose no pattern from a group for that scene.
So you can bring instruments in and out, switch up the variations.
Totally. You're essentially switching patterns on or off within each group, scene by scene. Think of the patterns as your palette, and the scenes are how you mix those colors together over time.
Like Lego bricks you said earlier.
Yeah.
Clicking different combinations together for each scene.
That's a great way to put it. And the tutorial gives concrete examples. Let's walk through them quickly.
Yeah, let's. What's the pattern combo in scene 1 again?
Scene 1, pattern 1 drums, pattern 1 bass, pattern 1 sitar. The intro, maybe?
Okay. Then scene 2.
Scene 2, they keep pattern 1 for drums and pattern 1 for bass, but they turn off the sitar completely, so just the rhythm section playing.
Creates a bit of space, drops an element.
Yeah.
Nice. Scene 3.
Scene 3, everything comes back in, using the initial patterns again. So pattern 1 drums, pattern 1 bass, pattern 1 sitar, like returning to the main theme.
Familiarity. Okay. Now, when do the second patterns come in?
Scene 4, here, they switch it up. They use pattern 2 for the drums and pattern 2 for the bass, but they keep pattern 1 for the sitar.
Ah, so the groove changes, the bass line changes, but the sitar melody stays the same as before. Creates a different feel.
Exactly. Builds intensity or variation in the rhythm section. And then scene 5.
Let me guess. All the pattern 2s.
You got it. Scene 5 uses pattern 2 drums, pattern 2 bass, and D pattern 2 sitar. This is likely the most complex or varied section using all the alternative ideas together.
Wow. Okay, so just by picking which of the 2 patterns plays in each of the 3 groups across 5 scenes, you've built 5 distinct musical sections.
Pretty much sketched out a basic song arrangement. Intro, verse variation, chorus maybe, different verse, outro variation. Something like that.
And there's a place in Maschine actually see this sequence laid out visually.
Yeah, the tutorial briefly shows the arranger view. It's like a timeline where you can place your scenes in order. Scene 1, then scene 2, scene 3, and so on. That's where you see the overall song structure visually.
And these scenes, you can trigger them live too, right? Not just sequence them.
Absolutely. You can play them back in the arranged order to hear your song structure, or you can trigger them manually, maybe using the pads, in any order you want. Great for jamming, live performance, trying out different arrangements on the fly.
Adds a performance element. Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's try to summarize the big picture from this tutorial. It seems like a clear hierarchy.
Definitely.
Groups hold the sounds, the instruments. Patterns hold the short musical ideas, the beats, the melodies for those sounds within their group.
The loops.
And scenes. Scenes are where you arrange those patterns, choosing which combination plays together to build sections, and ultimately the structure of your track.
That's it, perfectly put. Groups contain sounds, patterns contain ideas, scenes arrange those ideas over time. The tutorial lays that foundation really, really well.
And it's important to stress, like you said, this is the foundation. This understanding opens the door to way more complex stuff.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. This is just scratching the surface. But mastering this core loop, groups, patterns, scenes, is the key to unlocking everything else Maschine can do.
So for listeners starting out or maybe feeling a bit lost in the Maschine workflow, this tutorial seems like a fantastic resource for clarifying those connections.
Totally agree.
What are some logical next steps then? If someone watches this, gets it, where do they go next?
Well, first off, just experiment. Load different sounds, try making more patterns, maybe longer patterns, different time signatures.
Get hands-on.
Definitely. Then maybe dive into scene automation. That's where you make changes happen automatically within a scene, like filter sweeps or effects changes. Adds a lot of movement.
Oh, okay. Dynamic changes.
Yeah. And the video mentions a dedicated song mode near the end. Exploring that would be a natural next step for more detailed, linear arrangement of your scenes into a finished track.
Lots to dig into. You know, stepping back, it's interesting how this whole process, this layering, sound, then phrase, then section, feels kind of similar to how we build other complex things, maybe even how we write or structure arguments or organize projects. Start with the basic components and arrange them into larger structures.
That's a really sharp observation. It is a modular approach, isn't it? You create these self-contained blocks of ideas, the patterns, and then you have this higher level, the scenes, where you orchestrate how those blocks interact.
Yeah.
That idea of breaking complexity down into manageable units and then combining those units in creative ways, that applies everywhere. It's a powerful way to think, not just about music.
Makes you wonder, what other systems in life, maybe things that seem chaotic, could actually be understood better if you look for those fundamental building blocks, the groups, patterns, and scenes, metaphorically speaking? Something to ponder.